You walk into one of Boston's most treasured museums and you see empty frames, gilded, hanging exactly where Isabella Stewart Gardner placed them over a century ago. But the masterpieces they once held, cut out, rolled up, gone. March 18, 1990, 1:24 in the morning. Two men in police uniforms ring the buzzer. A 23-year-old security guard named Richard Abbott presses the button. 81 minutes later, 13 works worth $500 million vanish, the largest property theft in United States history. But here is what almost nobody talks about: the tools they used to steal Rembrandt's only seascape, to rip a Vermeer from its frame, to slice through genius. A blade? Crude, savage, primitive, $3 at a hardware store. That opened the vault to $500 million in art. Boston, 1990. Just after midnight on March 18, two men sit in a red Dodge Daytona on Palace Road, about 100 feet from the museum's side entrance. Boston police uniforms, hats, badges. Revelers leaving a nearby party assume they are cops. Inside, Rick Abbott patrols with a flashlight, 23. Berkeley dropout, bass player, minimum wage. Randy Heston works with him, 25. First night shift. Around 1:15, fire alarms go off, multiple rooms. Abbott finds no smoke, no flames. Returns to the desk. The panel blinks. Nothing makes sense. Handcuffs. Heston walks in. More cuffs. Then the truth. Gentlemen, this is a robbery. Duct tape over their heads, over their eyes. They lead them to the basement without asking directions. They know where to go. Handcuff Abbott to a workbench, Heston to a pipe. They check wallets, threaten them. Know where they live, promise reward for silence, then disappear upstairs. Straight to the second floor. To the Dutch room. Rembrandt. Vermeer. Flink, 133. They remove Vermeer's The Concert, one of only 34 Vermeers known to exist, worth $250 million alone. Most valuable stolen painting in the world. Set aside, 143. Rembrandt's Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, 1633, 161.7 by 129.8 centimeters. Rembrandt's only seascape. They pull out a blade, they slice. Canvas separates, rough cuts, jagged edges, paint flakes falling, irreversible damage. They cut A Lady and Gentleman in black, the same way, 4 by 3.5 feet. Rembrandt's first double portrait. X-rays showed a child painted near the lady. Rembrandt covered it. The child died, too painful for the couple, gone forever with savage cuts. They grab Flink's Landscape with an Obelisk, a tiny Rembrandt etching, an ancient Chinese beaker, Shang Dynasty, 1200 to 1100 before Common Era, 151, short gallery, narrow hallway. They unscrew a frame holding a Napoleonic flag, Silk, 1st Regiment, 1813. Cannot get all screws out, abandon it, take only the bronze eagle finial, 10 inches, 5 Degas sketches, 241. Blue room movement detected. But strange, no footsteps during the heist time, only Abbott's earlier patrol at 1227 and 1253, yet Manet's Chez Tortoni disappears. Portrait of a man in a top hat, frame left behind. How without triggering sensors? Someone already moved it, left it for them. Frame ends up on the security director's chair. Guards remain bound. Duct tape over eyes. Abbott sings Bob Dylan. I shall be released. For hours. 8:15. Day shift arrives. Find the guards, please come. Empty frames on walls. Protective glass smashed. Canvas edges on stretchers where the blade cut. 13 pieces gone. The average art heist takes 10 minutes. This one took 81. Why so long? Why 2 trips to the car? How did they know the alarm printouts were stored in a specific location? How did they know the alarms would not alert police? They moved like they had been inside before, like they had practiced, like someone told them exactly what to do. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the FBI's official case files on the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, published and updated through April 2025, and from investigative reporting by retired FBI agent Jeffrey Kelly's first in-depth interview with the Boston Globe, published March 19, 2025, detailing his 20-plus years leading the investigation. Now back to the information. Investigation begins. Boston police, FBI, guards separated, questioned. Rick Abbott becomes suspect number 1. He opened the door, broke protocol, did not hit panic button. Was the only one in the blue room where Chez Tortoni was taken. 20 minutes before the thieves arrived, he opened the side door. Security footage shows it. He claims he checked the lock, but suspicion lingers. Abbott was a hippie, musician. Showed up drunk or stoned sometimes, used pot, LSD, cocaine. Says he was sober that night. Passes 2 lie detector tests. Early FBI agent concludes the guards were too incompetent to have done it themselves, but questions remain. Abbott lives with suspicion 34 years. Dies February 2024 at 57 in Vermont. Never stops saying innocent. Internal wars, power struggles, theories multiply. Ransom, prison trades, wealthy collector, IRA. Then, names surface. Carmelo Merlino runs TRC Auto Body in Dorchester, known mob associate. In 1992, FBI source says David Turner has access to paintings. Merlino arrested for cocaine trafficking. Says he can return them for reduced sentence. Asks Turner to find them. Turner claims they are in a South Boston church. Nothing comes. Merlino dies in prison 2005. Whoa, but when Reisfelder dies of cocaine overdose in March 1991 at his Quincy apartment, the painting is gone. Merlino finds the body, Leonard DiMuzio, Reisfelder's partner, 43, from Rockland. Home invasions, strong, violent, matches the taller thief. Disappears March 1991, body in June, trunk of a car in East Boston, shot dead, execution style. No charges ever filed. 2 others die within 18 months. James Marks boasted about access to paintings. Shot outside his Lynn home February 1991, 50 years old. Bobby Donati, implicated by multiple people. Stabbed outside his Revere home September 1991. Found days later in his Cadillac trunk. Throat slashed. 4 deaths, all within a year and a half. They announced they know who did it, with a high degree of confidence. They believe the thieves were members of a criminal organization based in New England. They traced the artwork to Connecticut and Philadelphia through organized crime networks. There were attempts to sell some pieces around 2003, but they will not name the suspects publicly. 2 years later, in 2015, reporters see an FBI PowerPoint presentation. It points to George Reisfelder and Leonard DiMuzio. Composite sketches match their faces, both dead since 1991. The FBI never officially confirms, but the evidence stacks. Reisfelder drove a red Dodge Daytona. The car witnesses saw outside the museum that night. Both men had connections to Merlino. Both knew how to pose as cops. Both died suspiciously shortly after. Investigators believe they were killed for the paintings or to keep them quiet. The deaths had a chilling effect on the investigation. Everyone who knew anything ended up dead or silent. Canvas damaged beyond perfect repair. Art experts look at how the paintings were removed and conclude these were not professionals commissioned by a collector. These were criminals who saw canvas and wood and thought, faster to cut than unscrew. The blade made transport easy. Roll up the canvas, slide it into a tube, fit it in a hatchback, but it destroyed something irreplaceable. Even if every stolen piece is recovered tomorrow, conservators say they will never look the same. The cuts are too severe. The stress on the remaining paint too great. Storage conditions unknown for 35 years. Temperature, humidity, light exposure. Every day that passes degrades them further. The blade that took 3 seconds to slice through Rembrandt also sliced through 357 years of preservation. That is what makes this heist so brutal. Not just the theft, the method. They unscrewed part of a flag frame before giving up. They had time. So why the blade? The answer might be simpler than we think. Ease, efficiency. A painting screwed into a frame takes time to disassemble. You need the right tools. You might strip a screw, the frame might crack. But a canvas stretched over a stretcher bar, 1 cut at the top, 1 at the bottom, 2 on the sides, pull, done. 30 seconds, maximum. For criminals who were not art lovers, who did not understand what they were destroying, it was logical. Brutal, but logical. That $3 blade became the key to $500 million in art, and the reason that art will never be whole again. He allegedly took some pieces to Connecticut, gave them to Robert Gentile, another mobster, Connecticut-based. Genovese crime family connections. Guarente died in 2004, but before he died, his wife told the FBI he had given Gentile some of the Gardner artwork. The FBI searched Gentile's property multiple times, found nothing, but they found a list, handwritten. All 13 stolen pieces, their estimated values. Gentile denied everything, said he knew nothing. He went to prison for unrelated weapons charges, got out in 2019, 83 years old, the only living person who likely had first-hand knowledge of the heist. He died in 2021, taking his secrets to the grave, another dead end. An informant said Turner had access to the paintings. Turner denied involvement, served over 20 years in prison for unrelated crimes, armed robbery, armored car heist attempts. The FBI offered immunity, reduced sentences, anything if he would talk about the Gardner heist. He refused, stayed silent. He got out in 2019, November, 1 month after another associate, Stephen Rossetti, was released. Turner is the only surviving member of the Merlino crew, free, living somewhere in Massachusetts. He has never been charged with the Gardner theft, maintains innocence, but investigators still believe he might know something. In March 2025, retired FBI agent Jeffrey Kelly spoke publicly for the first time since retiring. Kelly led the investigation for over 20 years, from 2002 to 2024. He laid out his theory. Carmelo Merlino arranged the heist, possibly at someone else's request. He sent Reisfelder and DiMuzio, petty criminals, not art experts. The plan was simple. steal some Rembrandts, make quick money. Then they walked in and saw what they had. Vermeer, more Rembrandts, Degas, Manet. They woke up on March 19 to realize they had committed the heist of the century, but they did not know how to handle it. They cut when they should have removed carefully. They took pieces that were too famous to sell. They left behind Titian's The Rape of Europa, most valuable painting in the building, worth more than everything they took combined. Why? Size. It was too big, measured much larger than the Rembrandts, would not fit in their car. Amateur hour mistakes. Habeth had given his 2-week notice around the time of the theft. He opened the side door 20 minutes before the thieves arrived. A signal. He was the only one who entered the blue room where Chez Tortoni was taken. Kelly thinks Habeth took the Manet and left it for the thieves. Expected them to save it for him. Instead, they left the empty frame on the security director's chair. A message, or an accident. Habeth died insisting he was innocent. No charges were ever filed, but the questions remain. An independent consultant said the security was on par with most museums, but needed improvements. The Museum of Fine Arts in Boston recommended upgrades. The Gardner Board said no, budget constraints. And Isabella's directive forbidding major renovations. The guards were paid barely above minimum wage. The museum's security flaws were an open secret among Boston's criminal elite. By 1990, the Gardner was a sitting duck. Everyone knew it. Whitey Bulger, Boston's most powerful crime boss, head of the Winter Hill Gang, he denied involvement, but FBI agent Thomas McShane investigated him anyway. Bulger had strong ties to Boston police. Could explain how the thieves got real police uniforms, or maybe real cops did the heist. Bulger also had ties to the Provisional Irish Republican Army, the IRA. McShane noticed something. The fire alarms that went off before the heist. Tripping alarms as a distraction. A calling card of the IRA and the Ulster Volunteer Force. Both had agents in Boston in 1990. Both had pulled art heists before. McShane found no evidence tying Bulger or the IRA to the theft. But the theory persists. Some retired investigators believe the paintings ended up in Ireland. Whitey Bulger was captured in 2011. Convicted of racketeering and murder. He was killed in prison in 2018. Never said a word about the Gardner heist. Drug charges, so he could not have been directly involved. He provided context about how the underground art market worked in the 1990s. How stolen masterpieces moved, how they got traded, used as collateral, disappeared into private collections. Connor said he believed the paintings went to Saudi Arabia. Another investigator said Canada. A source claimed they saw one painting in Dublin, Ireland. Other leads traced works to South America, France, Jamaica, Japan. 35 years later, not a single piece has surfaced. Not one credible sighting. Not one confirmed offer to return them, despite a $10 million reward. The largest private reward ever offered for stolen art, plus immunity from prosecution. The statute of limitations expired decades ago. Anyone could come forward now without facing theft charges, but nothing. Silence. In 1994, 4 years after the heist, the museum made a decision. They hung the empty frames back on the walls, exactly where the stolen works once hung, the Dutch room, the short gallery, the blue room, gilded frames with nothing inside, wallpaper showing through, a visible wound. Museum director said it was intentional, a reminder of what was lost, hope for what might return. Visitors walk into the Dutch room and stop. The empty frame where The Storm on the Sea of Galilee hung takes up most of one wall. Massive, ornate, hollow. Next to it, another empty frame. A lady and gentleman in black. Gone. Across the room, the space where Vermeer's The Concert sat, the most valuable stolen painting in the world. $250 million. One of 34 Vermeers in existence, just a frame. Isabella Stewart Gardner spent her life building this collection. She traveled the world, Venice, Paris, London, Boston. She bought pieces she loved, arranged them with obsessive precision. The museum opened in 1903. She wanted it to be free to the public. Education and enrichment forever. She died in 1924. And in 1990, 2 men with a blade undid a lifetime of curation in 81 minutes. The investigation continues. Active, ongoing. The FBI's art crime team, museum officials, private investigators, they follow leads around the world. In 2024, just weeks before we recorded this, investigators traveled somewhere to investigate a new tip. They will not say where. They will not say what they found. The museum's security director, Anthony Amore, walks past the empty frames multiple times every day. He says it is frustrating, a reminder of what they have not accomplished, but also motivation. The case file grows, tips come in constantly, most lead nowhere, but some contain fragments, pieces of information that might eventually connect. Art theft expert and author Stephen Kirkian wrote in his book Master Thieves that Vincent Ferrara, former New England mafia capo, claimed Bobby Donati confessed to him in 1990. Said he robbed the museum, buried the artwork, planned to use it to broker Ferrara's release from prison. Ferrara was facing racketeering charges, but the claim came through an anonymous intermediary, never directly from Ferrara, and Donati was murdered in September 1991, so if he did have the paintings, he never used them to make a deal. They disappeared with him. The theory that makes the most sense, according to investigators who have spent decades on this case, is simple and sad. George Reisfelder and Leonard DiMuzio pulled off the heist on orders from Carmelo Merlino. They were low-level criminals. They did not understand what they had stolen. They cut paintings that should never be cut. They took works too famous to sell. They left the most valuable piece in the building because it was too big. When they realized what they had done, they tried to move the artwork through mob channels, Boston to Connecticut to Philadelphia, but the paintings were too hot, too recognizable, too dangerous. So they got passed around, traded, used as collateral in drug deals or other crimes. Each hand they passed through, each new location, each person who hid them in a basement or storage unit degraded them further. And the people who knew where they were kept dying. Reisfelder, DiMuzio, Marx, Donati, Merlino, Guarente, Gentile, one by one, either murdered to keep them quiet or dying of natural causes or overdoses before they could talk. The paintings are still out there, somewhere, in pieces maybe, rolled up in a tube in someone's attic, hidden in a storage unit in Philadelphia or Connecticut, locked in a safe in Ireland or France or Japan, or destroyed, cut into fragments and sold separately, burned to get rid of evidence, lost forever. That is the nightmare scenario, that the blade that sliced them from their frames in 1990 was only the first cut, that they have been cut again and again, until nothing recognizable remains. The original thieves die, the heat dies down, someone finds them in an estate, or a guilty conscience emerges, or a new generation wants the reward money. 35 years is a long time, but not unprecedented. The Nazis stole art during World War II. Some pieces did not resurface until the 1980s and 90s, 50 years later. The Gardner theft is the same timeline. The thieves are dead. Most of the people who knew anything are dead, but the art might still exist, somewhere, waiting. Just return the art. Contact the museum's security chief, Anthony Amore, 6-172-785-114, or reward@gardnermuseum.org. The FBI also maintains a file, tips.fbi.gov, 1-800-CALL-FBI. The National Stolen Art File lists all 13 pieces, images, descriptions, measurements. If anyone anywhere sees something that matches, report it, even if you're not sure, even if it seems like a long shot. The empty frames hang in the museum, a scar on Boston's cultural landscape, a reminder that some crimes echo for decades, that a $3 blade in the hands of two desperate criminals can destroy more than canvas and paint. It can destroy history, legacy, the careful work of a lifetime. Isabella Stewart Gardner spent years assembling her collection, chose each piece, placed it exactly where she wanted, created a museum as a work of art itself, and two men with a knife erased part of that in one night. 35 years later, the frames wait. Visitors stand in front of them, try to imagine what was there. Rembrandt's only seascape? Vermeer's concert. A lady and gentleman in black with a ghost child painted beneath, all gone, cut from their frames, rolled up, carried out into the Boston night, into the underworld, into legend. If you value documented crime and art history like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This investigation is ongoing, and every new viewer might be the one with information that leads to recovery. Now back to the final pieces of this story. Every old mob associate who remembers something. Every storage unit that gets cleaned out. Every estate sale where someone finds a rolled-up canvas in the back of a closet. The FBI and the museum chase every lead. Most are dead ends. Someone thinks they saw a painting that looks like the Rembrandt. It turns out to be a print, a reproduction, or just wishful thinking. But some tips have merit. Some point to real locations, real people. In 2013, the FBI announced they had traced some artwork to Connecticut and Philadelphia. They identified figures in organized crime who had access around 2003. But by the time investigators caught up, those men were dead or in prison or refusing to talk. The trail went cold again. In 2015, the museum doubled the reward from $5 million to $10 million. They said the offer would expire December 31st, 2017, but when that date came, they quietly extended it. The reward still stands. $10 million, the largest art crime reward in history, and no one has claimed it since 1633. His first double portrait, Rembrandt's self-portrait etching, tiny, postage stamp sized. Vermeer's The Concert, 1663 to 1666, one of 34 Vermeers, worth $250 million alone. Govert Flink's Landscape with an Obelisk, 1638, 5 Dago works, charcoal sketches, watercolors, horses and jockeys. Manet's Chez Tortoni, 1875. A man in a top hat, an ancient Chinese garter bronze beaker, 1200 to 1100 before Common Era. Shang Dynasty, Bronze Eagle finial. French, 1813 to 1814. Napoleonic, 13 pieces, $500 million. Current value probably higher. The list is burned into the memory of every investigator who has worked this case, every museum official, every art historian. These are not just paintings and objects. They are cultural touchstones, pieces of human achievement, and they are missing. That Robert Guarente had some, that Robert Gentile probably knew where they were, both dead. We know Rick Abath opened the door, possibly helped, possibly was just fooled. He died in 2024. We know David Turner likely knows something. He is alive, free, silent. We know the paintings were cut from their frames with a blade, crude, brutal, permanent damage. We know they were rolled up, transported in a red Dodge Daytona, driven away into Boston. We know motion detectors recorded the thieves' movements. 81 minutes, 2 trips, methodical, unhurried. We know Monet's Chez Tortoni was taken from the Blue Room, even though motion detectors never recorded anyone entering that room during the heist. Someone moved it beforehand. Probably Abath. Left it for the thieves. We know the empty frames were rehung in 1994. Still there today, waiting. What we do not know is where the art is now. 35 years is a long time for paintings to survive without proper care. Climate control, humidity levels, light exposure, conservation. Canvases crack, paint flakes, mold grows. Insects spore. Every year increases the damage. Even if someone finds them tomorrow, conservators will spend years trying to repair them. The cuts alone are catastrophic. You cannot just stitch canvas back together like fabric. The tension is wrong. The weave is disrupted. The paint layer sits on top of that canvas. When you cut and roll it, you stress the paint. Microfractures form, the paint lifts, flakes fall off. And if the paintings have been stored improperly, too hot, too cold, too humid, too dry, the damage compounds. Wood panels warp, canvases sag, colors fade, the binding media breaks down. What might return to Boston could be shadows of what was stolen. Rembrandt's seascape with half the ocean missing, Vermeer's concert with faces eroded, or nothing at all. Anthony Amore walks past those empty frames every day and believes, because the alternative is unbearable, that Isabella Stewart Gardner's legacy was permanently scarred by 2 criminals with a blade, that 13 pieces of human genius are gone forever, that the largest art heist in history will never be solved. So the investigation continues. 35 years, thousands of tips, hundreds of interviews, decades of work, and the frames wait. In 2018, a true crime podcast called Last Seen dug deep into the case. Reporters WBOR and the Boston Globe. They interviewed everyone still alive who knew anything, followed leads, examined evidence. The series brought new attention, new tips. In 2021, Netflix released a 4-part documentary series. This is a Robbery, directed by Colin Barnacle. It explored every theory, every suspect, every dead end. More attention, more tips, and still nothing concrete. The paintings remain missing, but each new piece of media brings the case to a wider audience. Someone watching might know something, might remember something, might have seen something. That is the hope, that enough people learn about this case that eventually someone comes forward. Someone who inherited a storage unit and found a rolled-up canvas. Someone who bought a house and discovered something hidden in the walls. Someone who knows someone who knows someone. Art crimes are often solved by chance. A random discovery, a guilty conscience, a deathbed confession. The Gardner heist might be the same. One day someone will walk into a museum or FBI office and say, I know where they are, or I have them, or I saw them. And the empty frames will finally be filled again. March 18, 2025. 35 years to the day. The anniversary passes. Investigators mark it quietly. The media runs stories. Boston remembers. But the paintings do not return. The museum holds a small ceremony. They invite the public. They talk about hope, about persistence, about Isabella Stewart Gardner's vision, and they ask anyone with information to come forward. The $10 million reward still stands. Confidentiality assured, no questions asked. Just return the art. That is all they want. The art. Not arrests, not revenge. Just the paintings back where they belong. On the walls of the museum Isabella built, in the frames she chose, the way she intended, forever. That was her wish. Her will explicitly stated nothing in the collection could be moved or changed, but she did not anticipate this. She did not imagine someone would break in and cut her masterpieces from their frames. She died in 1924, 66 years before the heist. She never knew the Gardner Museum would become famous for what was stolen rather than what remains. Still exactly where Isabella put them. The museum is open. Visitors come. They walk through the galleries. They stand in front of the empty frames. They imagine. They mourn. And they hope. Because hope is all anyone has left. Hope that somewhere, in a basement in Connecticut or a storage unit in Philadelphia or a vault in Ireland, 13 pieces of art history survive. Damaged, maybe. Degraded, certainly. But intact enough to return to restore, to hang again in their frames, to complete Isabella Stewart Gardner's vision. Hope that one day someone will make the call, send the email, walk through the door, and say, I know where they are, here's how to get them back. And on that day, the empty frames will stop being a wound and become a story of recovery, a miracle, a resolution. But until then, they hang, empty, waiting, haunting, a reminder of what a blade can destroy and what humanity has lost. They were petty criminals, not art experts, not sophisticated thieves, so they did what they knew. They used a blade, cut and run, roll and go, quick and brutal. And in doing so, they destroyed something irreplaceable. Kelly also said he believes Abbott was involved, that the evidence points too clearly to ignore, the side door opening 20 minutes before the thieves arrived. A signal. The motion detectors not recording anyone in the blue room except Abbott. The Monet taken from that room. Abbott giving his notice around the time of the heist, planning to leave, maybe planning to take something with him. But the thieves double-crossed him, took the Monet but did not save it for him, left the frame as a message, or just did not care. Abbott lived with suspicion his whole life, died insisting he was innocent. We will never know for certain, but the questions linger. Did he help them? Or was he just a foolish 23-year-old who made a terrible mistake? Either way, he opened the door, and 81 minutes later, $500 million in art was gone. They were two guys with police uniforms from a costume shop or stolen from real cops. Handcuffs, duct tape, a blade, probably a knife, maybe a box cutter. Basic tools. No special training, no art expertise, just brute force and a willingness to destroy priceless works for convenience. That is what makes this case so frustrating for investigators. If they were sophisticated, there would be patterns, methods, connections to other art thefts. But this was crude. One-off. A couple of mob associates who got it over their heads and then died before they could figure out what to do with what they stole. And the paintings paid the price. Cut, rolled, stuffed in a trunk, passed through hands that did not know how to care for them. Treated like drugs or weapons or any other contraband, not as the cultural treasures they were, and that is why the empty frames hurt so much, because this was preventable. If the museum had better security, if the guards had followed protocol, if the thieves had been caught in the act, if someone had talked in the 35 years since, but none of that happened, and so the frames hang empty. The thieves grabbed it from a table in the Dutch room. Why? It was not particularly valuable compared to the paintings. It was not famous. It was not even large, about the size of a drinking cup. But they took it. Maybe they thought it was valuable. Maybe they thought it was easy to sell. Maybe they just grabbed everything they could carry. But that beaker represents something. It survived 3,000 years, wars, dynasties, empires, migrations, collectors, auctions. It made it all the way to Boston, to Isabella Stewart Gardner's museum. And then two criminals stuffed it in a bag and drove off. Where is it now? In someone's house, being used as a vase, in a storage unit buried under boxes, melted down for bronze, gone forever. 3,000 years of history erased in one night. That beaker is a symbol of the entire heist. Time and care and preservation undone by violence and greed. A blade and a bag. That is all it took. That has happened before. Stolen art recovered because someone saw it in a catalog or online and called authorities. But the Gardner pieces are so famous, so recognizable, that it seems impossible they could surface without being identified immediately. Unless they have been altered, cut into smaller pieces, painted over, destroyed beyond recognition. That is the fear, that what gets recovered, if anything, will be fragments, scraps, shadows. Not the masterpieces that hung in those frames, but even fragments would be something. Proof they survived, proof they can be studied, analyzed, remembered, even if they can never be fully restored. Traveled around the world following tips, and he still believes the art will come back. He has to. Because the alternative is giving up, and you cannot give up on something this important. He walks past those empty frames every day, multiple times. He says it is frustrating, but also motivating. A reminder of the work still to be done, the leads still to follow, the tips still to investigate. He says the museum receives tips constantly. Most are junk, conspiracy theories, attention seekers. But some contain real information, fragments of truth, and those are the ones that keep the investigation alive. One of those tips, maybe next week or next month or 10 years from now, will be the one that breaks the case, that leads to recovery, that fills those frames. That is what Amore believes. That is what keeps him going. That is why he answers the phone every time it rings. Checks every email, follows every lead, because one of them might be the one. That blade did more damage than bombs or fire or time, because it was wielded by people who did not understand what they were destroying, who saw dollar signs instead of genius, who thought canvas was just fabric and paint was just color. They were wrong. And the world is poorer for their ignorance. The empty frames in the Dutch room are proof. Rembrandt's only seascape, gone, cut from its frame. Vermeer's concert, gone, cut from its frame. A lady and gentleman with a ghost child beneath, gone, cut, rolled, lost, and somewhere, maybe in a box, in an attic or a vault in a foreign country or buried in the ground, those pieces survive, damaged, degraded, but maybe intact enough to return. That is the hope. That is what those empty frames represent. Not just loss, but the possibility of recovery, of restoration, of justice, of a $3 blade being undone by decades of patient investigation, of art surviving against the odds, of Isabella Stewart Gardner's vision being made whole again, but only if someone comes forward, only if someone talks, only if someone decides $500 million or $10 million or just doing the right thing is worth breaking silence. Until then, the frames wait, and the story continues.